right, hi, welcome to Logo Animation 2 Ways in After Effects. I'm Kalika, I'm a motion designer and animator, and this is take 2 of logo animation. I prepared these logos using Illustrator and the Masks to Layers script in After Effects. You can download the files that I'm going to be working with today in the description. And let me show you what we're going to make. So we're going to be making 2 versions of this Pfizer logo. And here we go. But this is the first one, and it involves some wipes, a radial wipe, and a linear wipe. I'll probably slow it down. And then we have one more, and that's this guy. And this is a little bit more involved. So I'm going to get this set up for animation. I'm going to select I'm going to select my main composition right here in the corner, and I'm going to call it Pfizer version 1. So there's a couple things I want to just set up for this. The first thing I'm going to do is import a flattened version of the entire thing here. So I'm going to go into my project folder, into footage, and I'm going to locate that Illustrator file, and I'm going to hit import. Okay, there we go, footage merged, and we've got it. I'm going to drag it right on top of everything else, hit T for opacity, and I'm going to drop the opacity value to 50%. I'm going to set this lowered opacity merged version of my logo to be a guide layer, which I can do by just right-clicking and choosing guide layer. And then I can lock that. I've got this and it is ready. So I'm going to duplicate this composition right here. I can go to the edit menu and duplicate. And now I have 2 versions. And the first version, I'm going to animate the way that I just showed you guys, in case if you didn't see that. Let me import that finished project. And yeah, you can import one After Effects project into another, which is sort of amazing. So I have this finished project that I did, and I'm just dropping it in. It comes in its own little folder, which is really nice. And I'm just going to double click on that. And this is the coming together version. And then we've got this guy, which is the logo wipes version. So we're going to do the logo wipes version first, okay? And if we just watch this down really quick, the first thing that happens is that the logo combines on, okay? It's all one ring, and it wipes on using a radial wipe. Nice. And then it scales back and separates. And after it separates, then the word wipes on. Okay, so here are our beats. Radial wipe, move back, separate, wipe. Okay, so here's my version 1. And I'm going to begin the process by pre-composing things. So I'm going to take layers that I want to act as a unit, and I'm going to pre-compose them. So I'm going to select light top, dark top, light bottom, and dark bottom. All of those pieces with the shift key, I got them all. And I'm going to go to layer menu and pre-compose. And I'm going to call that PC dash icon. Okay? And now I've got that PC icon here. And I always start my pre-compositions with PC dash so that it's really obvious that this is a pre-composition, and alphabetically it shows up as such. Now remember, a pre-composition is basically like a bag of layers. So if you if you want all of your layers to act as a unit, pre-composing is a great way to do that. I'm going to select all the letters and pieces of the word Pfizer, and I'm going to connect those as well using pre-composing, PC word. Okay, and now I have those pieces ready. And just to make things a little bit easier, I'm just going to set the anchor point for the PC icon around the middle of it. So yeah, right around there. And remember, you can only set the anchor point with the anchor point tool. If you do it down in the timeline, it actually shifts your layer, and that's not cool. So then I've got my PC Word, and I'll set the anchor point for that in the middle. Now, the anchor point is a little fussy, guys, so I always go back to the selection tool so that I don't mess up my layers down in the timeline. All right, so I've got my icon, I've got my word. Let's work on our icon first inside the pre-composition. So I want the bottoms of these to move with the tops of them. So I'm going to have this piece separate from this piece. Okay? All right. And if anyone is having trouble with going through the steps, feel free to drop me a chat or a comment and I'll be happy to help you out. So I'm going to connect these using parenting. Now, if you don't see the parent and link column, right click up at the top here, go to columns and choose parent and link. And then you can connect dark top to light top using this little pick width guide. Connect dark bottom to light bottom using this pick width guide. Okay, so now I've got these two pieces and they're going to drive the pieces below them. So logo wipes has this wipe thing happen first and then it separates, and that's like kind of the last thing that it does. This is the final resting point and it's like around a second. So at 1 second, 1.00, remember, it's 1 second and 0 frames. I'm going to take light top, hit P for position and turn that on because this is where I want it to finally end. And then I'm going to go back in time, maybe about 10 frames or so, and just move that down so that it connects, okay? And I'm going to zoom in quite a bit and just make sure that my layers here are connecting nicely. And that looks pretty good. Okay, that actually looks better than the previous version because the previous version had a little gap. Okay, so now I've got this just kind of doing this thing. And I can set an ease at the end there. And I'm going to come back over to my finished version just to cheat off of that a little bit. And I see that here it wipes on and then it does that. And the wipe happens over the course of about half a second, okay? And it's going to happen in my main composition. I just rename this composition so that I can keep it distinct in my mind. So I'm going to go to composition settings, and that's where you can change the name. And I'm going to call this visor wipes done. Okay, just going to move that tab over to the right. And then I'm going to get started on the animation for the, the remake. Okay, so this guy has now done its thing, right? And earlier in life, we wanted it to rest into this position. So I'm going to animate a little bit backwards. I want this to end up here. I also, and that's in position. So I hit P for position and I turned on the stopwatch. Hold Shift and type S, and I'm going to turn on the stopwatch next to scale as well. And then I'm going to go earlier in time, just a touch, like, I don't know, a few frames. So I was at 15 frames. I'm going to go to like 10 frames or so. And I'm just going to move that to the middle. It's hard to tell what the middle is sometimes. So I like to bring up my title and action safety. The hotkey for that is your apostrophe. So the apostrophe key will bring that up. And if I turn off all my layers, you can see there's like a little crosshair in the middle there. I use that a lot. So this crosshair is denoting the center of my composition. Beautiful. So that's the center of my composition, and I want this to be quite a bit bigger. Now, something to keep in mind, friends, when you're working with Illustrator layers do tend to like break down if you don't do this one really important thing. So I'm going to double click on this, and I'm going to show you that one really important thing. See these little switches? You have to turn all of them on. This is the continuously rasterized switch, and what it means is that After Effects is going to calculate the math behind the artwork. Vector artwork is based on math, and this is going to give you the math behind the art. Fabulous. Okie doke. So we also should probably turn on continuously rasterize on the pre-comp level because it's not going to do the math on the pre-comp level otherwise. So you have to turn it on here. Now, supposing you don't see this column, it might be because you have your blending modes turned on. So just click that back over and then you see it. Okay, so awesome. There is my perfect circle, and I'm going to have it wipe on before this. All right, so let's hide the word. Let's hide our little cheater guide layer that's keeping our place. And I'm going to put a radial wipe around this, okay? And I'm gonna go into Effects and Presets and just type Radial. And if you're getting a bunch of animation presets, you can just swivel that whole folder closed and then swivel close the blur and sharpen. You want to get it from transition. So radial wipe. Now, the way that wipes work is that when it's set to 100% transition completion, you don't see anything. When it's set to 0% transition completion, you see the whole layer. So it's the opposite of opacity, right? Because with opacity, if it's at 100%, you see the whole thing. Here, if it's set to 100%, you see nothing, okay? So we're going to have this draw on, but I want it to draw on from here and then go around clockwise. So the funny part about this is that even though the wipe is set to clockwise, when you're wiping something on, it's actually going counterclockwise. So it's a little bit of reverse math because the radial wipe is kind of calculated as if you're trying to get rid of things. So we want the wipe on to be clockwise, therefore we have to set this to counter. I just test it. I say, you know what, let me pretend this is for real, and I'm going from 100% transition completion to 0. And if that's the right direction, awesome. And if it's not, I switch it. The next thing I need to fix on this is the start angle. So the start angle is currently at 12 o'clock, but I want it to be starting over here. Okay, and I don't want it to show that little schnibble of dark blue. I'm just going to have it start on this part right here, okay? And I'm going to set this to 100% at the very beginning of my timeline, transition completion 100, and then I'm going to hit letter U to see that keyframe in my timeline. Now, when it comes to effects, you could put your effect information, well, you could set your keyframes and stuff in the timeline, or you can set them in the effect controls. The advantage of setting them in the effect controls is that you have all these interactive controls, and it's a little bit more spacious. There's a little bit more room to work. So I much prefer to work in the effect controls. Now, when it comes to effects, a lot of times they have one like ruling principle or property that drives all the rest of it. So this one, the ruling principle or property is transition completion. So notice it's the only property that has stopwatches turned on. Everybody else, I've changed properties. Well, excuse me, I've changed the values of them, but I've not set any stopwatches. And that's because they're not changing over time. They are what are known as constant values. So if I want to keyframe this over time, I turn on the stopwatch, I hit letter U, and that keyframe now shows up in the timeline, okay? I'm gonna advance my playhead forward, and at this point in time, I'm just gonna change my transition completion to 0, okay? So here we have it. We have it wipe on, move down. Okay, let's see if that comes back up. There we go. I apologize for that. I'm back. So where was I? I'm just going to go back a couple of steps here. Undo, undo, undo. Okay. So where I'd left off was that I was trying to slow this whole thing down. This all seemed like it was going a bit too fast. So this frequently happens with me where I play something back and I'm like, wow, that is twice as fast as it should be. So what you can do is come up here to the time code, hold the command key on a Mac or control key on a PC and just click that. And then it goes to frames. And that makes it a little bit easier to calculate. So I'm going to change my timing on this. So this is 10 frames. I'm going to change it to 20 frames. Whoops, sorry, 20 frames, okay? And I'm going to move this over 20 frames. My next move happens from 20 frames to 25 frames. So I want to change that to 10 frames long. So it had been 5 frames, now I want 10. So I'm going to click here and type 30. I'm going to move these last keyframes over, dragging, then holding shift and releasing my mouse, then releasing shift. Okay, so that wipes on. And then after that, I want it to separate. So I'm going to double click on that layer in order to access the contents. I hit letter U to see the keyframes here, and I'm going to move these keyframes so they start at this point. Okay, and this happens over the course of about 10 frames. I think I'd like to change that to 15. Now you can get like really fine control over your keyframes just by selecting here, hold Option or Alt, and hit the right arrow. So Option, right arrow, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so that has moved my second keyframe a little bit later. Okay, then I'm going to come back over here and I'm going to add the text wipe. Let's play that back one more time. And you can tell whether it's playing back at real time or not just by looking in your info window. So I rewind, play it back. Okay, and if you don't want to have to wait for the entire timeline to load, just take this blue bracket at the end. If you don't see the blue bracket, just move your mountains and grab the blue bracket and move it earlier. Okay, I hit spacebar. And that is ready for the text to wipe on. Awesome. So if you have any questions, just drop them in the comments or the chat and I'll be happy to answer. And now I want Pfizer to wipe on. I'm going to do that using the linear wipe effect. So I'm just going to pull this up right here. See this little darkish area between my preview and my effects tabs. And then right here, I'm going to type in linear wipe. Okay, and I'm going to double click on linear wipe to add it to the layer I've selected. Now I know that I want the layer to start where the linear wipe starts, so why not just drag the layer start so it starts at my playhead. As I drag, if I hold the shift key down, it's going to snap. So I want this transition completion to begin at the first word. Like I want to see it come, sorry, the first letter. I want it to see it come on left to right. So let's switch the angle to the other side, right? Just by dragging this little circle guy around. And then I'm going to change the transition completion, dragging it down. There we go. And I'm going to drag it down just until I can't see that letter P anymore. Now, if you're wondering, like, why isn't it at 100% when I can't see it? It's because the linear wipe is based on the dimensions of the entire composition. So if I'm at 55% here, let me just increase this like so, and then I advance like 10 frames, okay, 15 frames. So I had been at 30 frames, now I'm at 45. I can just change this value downward and eventually the whole word shows up. And I want to end the transition completion value when I see the whole word, not at 0, okay? Hit letter U and I can see all those keyframes down in the timeline. Hit F9 on my keyboard or right-click keyframe assist, easy ease, to slow down as we get into that last place, okay? So here we go. Okay, and then we can add an easy ease at the end of the radial wipe here. In fact, we can do it on both ends. Right click, keyframe assist, easy ease, and I'm going to do the same thing to cushion this as it gets into the final position here. So I'm going to right click, keyframe assist, easy ease again. All right, so let's play that back. Okay. Now, as a finishing touch, I'm going to put what I call, well, I don't call it this. After Effects calls it this. I'm going to put in a light sweep. So it's just going to go bling, like it's kind of shiny. Now you can't do that on this as it is. Like if I put an adjustment layer, it's not really going to work because of our white solid. So I'm going to need to pre-compose the icon and the word one more time in order to be able to accomplish this. And it's pretty simple. I select both of those layers. I'm going to go to Layer Menu, Pre-compose. I'm going to call this PC-all. And then I'm going to apply the effect called Light Sweep. Look at that, light sweep. So I just drag and drop that, or if the layer is already selected, I can double click it. And the way the light sweep works, look at, oh, that's so beautiful. So the way the light sweep works, I swear it never gets old. It's going to put a shiny beam across your artwork, and it's going to create like a fake beveled edge. And it's just so freaking shiny, and it makes me so happy to use it whenever I possibly can. So you can increase the sweep intensity, and then it gets shinier. You can increase or decrease the edge intensity, and you can also change the edge thickness. So if you want it to be like a thin, crisp edge, you can set this to a smaller number. And I'm just going to drag this, and I'm going to adjust the width a little bit, like make it a bit wider and maybe a little less intense. I'm just going to round these numbers. So I'm using like a width of 55, a sweep of 40, an intensity of 50, and an edge thickness of 3.5. Okay? And once the whole logo comes together, that's when I want this to kick in. So that means I kind of have to hide this off screen. So I'm just going to move this little control-y guy. If you don't see the control-y guy, click this little crosshair and just navigate over to where it is, right? And then I can turn on center, and let's see. Yeah, that was a good spot for centers. Hit letter U, and then advance, like, I don't know, about 10 frames or so. I think that'll do. And just take the center and move it to the other side. Now it's coming across like this, right? It's like a slice. And here's what it's going to look like. Ready? That is so fast. Let me move it later. All right, here we go. Not too bad. I could even make it a bit slower and no one will mind because everyone loves a good light sweep every now and again. Am I right? All right. Fabulous. So this one is done. Yes. Okay, so we made it through one. We're going to do the other one next. If you have any questions on it, feel free to drop it into the chat. All right. It's saying that I might be frozen. Okay, I'm not frozen anymore. Here we go. So next, I'm going to do the version 2. And version 2, I'm going to animate like this guy from my done project. So this guy looks like this. Okay? Simple enough, right? Shouldn't be too hard. Let's do this. So I'm going to take this guy and I'm going to get it prepped. So I'm going to rename this composition so I know what it is. Composition settings. This is my visor pieces done. I'm going to call that the pieces comp, okay? Because it comes together from pieces. And let's just break this down a little bit in terms of a play-by-play. So first of all, our pieces come together from nothing, and they overshoot, right? They overshoot past their destination, and then they kind of click back. And after they've overshot their destination, Then just collapse all my layers. There we go. Another U. The icon moves across, and then all the pieces start to come in. Okay. Now for this one, I'm going to connect all the layers together using a null object. And remember, a null object is an invisible layer that can be used to connect other layers to. Okay. And then the other layers will follow along with the null object's position, scale, and rotation. In addition to following along with the null object's position, scale, and rotation, these layers can have their own movement, which is really pretty nice. Okay, so let's get started with this one. I'm going to go to my version 2, and I'm going to prep it for animation. So first of all, let's parent and set anchor points and create that null object that connects everybody together. I'll start with the null object. Layer menu, new, null object. Then I'm going to take all these layers and I'm going to connect them to the null object. Okay. Then I'm going to connect the dark half circles with the light ones. Dark to light. Okay. And then I'm going to set anchor points on my layers. Now the problem with my layers is that they all have masks on them. And if you're not careful, if a layer has masks, you might accidentally move the mask points, which is not what you want. So here's what I'm going to do. You ready? I'm going to hide my masks. So just click this little toggle mask and shape path visibility button and turn it off. Okay? Next, we're going to take our light top and our light bottom, and we're going to go. Okay, that's the official term. So let's take a look at the done version, and they slide over at like 29 frames. Okay, so the whole thing from 22 to 29 is where it like lands into position. So we'll do that part actually first. Here's how. Everything is basically parented to the null object, first of all. Let's just clear that up. I had to take the dark top and bottom and parent them to the lights, but the lights are also parented to the null. So you could say that the lights are parented to the null, so they're the children, and the dark are grandparented to the null. So they're still all connected. So it was 22 to 29, right? So at 29 frames, I'm going to take that null object and hit P for position, turn on the stopwatch, and I'm going to make sure that my title and action safety are showing. There we go. And I'm going to go back in time to 22 frames. And at 22 frames, I'm just going to move that whole thing over like that, okay? Because this is where the whole animation is going to begin. All right? So let's turn off all the letters of the word. And if you're just joining us now, welcome. All of the files that you might need are located down in the description. You can download those. All right, so I'm going to be building this guy right here. All right, and we're back. Sorry about that. So I'm going to have these guys end up right here, okay? And in order to do that, I had to move them into this place. So I had done that using the null object. So I wanted it to end up here. Just to recap, I set a stopwatch for position right here. I went a little earlier in time. And I simply shifted the layer. Remember, you click the stopwatch once to start the animation process, then you don't click it again. Okay. Then the light top and the light bottom are going to end up at this location right here. A couple of frames before this, like maybe 3 or 4, and I can do that with Command left arrow if I'm on a Mac, Control left arrow if I'm on a PC. I'm just going to go back 3 frames. So I'm going to do Control left, left, left. And I'm going to move these guys just a little bit past their destination. And I'm doing this with the Shift and arrow keys held down. Okay? And then I'm going to rewind a little bit past like this. And I'm going to move them off screen. So I'm going to go drag. And if I hold the Shift key after I start dragging, it's going to hold it to the horizontal. Drag, hold Shift, continue. Nice. Okay, and I'm going to give these guys here an ease. There we go. All right, so that happened awfully fast. So let me just take this whole animation and move it a little bit earlier. Play it back again. All right, so that did that part. Fabulous. So that part is done. And now comes the fun part. We're going to have each of these little pieces assembled together. So we close all this stuff up. And I'm going to take all of my letter pieces and I'm going to hit the left square bracket key on my keyboard. Boom. And that starts them all there. Alternatively, I could just shift them over inside, hold the Shift key down, and it's just going to snap them. Okay? There we go. So now I've got all those guys there, and I want my keyframes to happen, yeah, I want them to happen over the course of maybe like 10 frames. Let's see. So how long does it take for one of these pieces to land? So I'm just paying attention to the letter P here. It started at 26. And it landed at 32. So that was a 6-frame progression. So I'm going to have all of these land in 6 frames. So I'm just going to advance by 6 frames. And a fun way to advance by 6 frames is to just click into the time code, type plus and 6, and hit return. And then I'm going to hit P for position and maybe R for rotation as well. So I hold the Shift key and type R. Now I have both position and rotation. Okay, and then I'm going to, before I move on, just double check the anchor points so that they're in like logical locations. So this letter P anchor point, not my favorite. Take that pan behind tool. And it's okay for me to make these changes right now because I haven't moved past the first keyframe that I set. Okay, and that's a really important thing to keep in mind as you're setting anchor points, that it's okay to change the anchor point as long as you haven't really started animating yet. So if you have either set no keyframes yet, or you've set keyframes but you haven't moved your playhead past them, it's okay to set your anchor points. So that's the cross piece. This is the down piece, so I want the anchor point for that to be here. It's unfortunate you can't set multiple anchor points at once. You have to click on these one at a time to set them, and you can only set them with that pan behind tool. So right here, I've clicked on it, but I can't see it in the timeline. So if I hit the X key on my keyboard, I see it in my timeline. And if I turn on and off, I can see that that's kind of like a letter C. So that could be really fun to animate. And then my E stick is this little guy right here. Okay, so the E like piece, I'm just going to leave as is so that I can maybe rotate it into place. And then I have my letter R, and I've got the letter R stick, which is separated. And then I've got this little letter R stem. And something else that might be helpful for you if you're animating logos is to just reduce the opacity so that you can see where layers are overlapping. And my R top, oh, interesting. Doesn't seem to have, oh, the mask was set to none. Ew. Let's change that to add. And then the R stick is set to add. Let's see. T for opacity. There we go. There's my stick. This one. Oh, solo. That'll help. Okay, so there's the other guy. Okay, and here. So you can solo layers using this little solo switch, and then you can set your anchor point like right here. Okay, that's so nice. And then here's my R stick, and that's so nice. And all of my anchor points are now set. I am ready to animate. This is going to be awesome. So selecting both, and I'm going to hit letter U so I can see their keyframes as well. And I'm going to move everything together. And this is like a common method that I use for animation. Move everything together and then offset it. So I zoom out a bit. I'm going to take my letter P, and here's my method. Okay, friends, I'm going to have everything go along the line of their angle. Does that make sense? I'm going to have everything move into position based on the angle of their mark. So this letter P has a particular angle to it, right? So if I move this up like so, you see how that's keeping that angle, and it's going to feel very natural to have it fall in from that angle. So just moving that up like so, and then I can kind of check it out a little bit, right? And see if that aligns properly. And that aligns pretty good. It's not perfect, but if I want to just nudge that, I could. I could just take this little guy and with my selection tool, just move it over by a couple of pixels. Nice. Okay, so now I have that falling into place. Beautiful. I'm going to take this piece and I'm going to have it come in from the side. And I'm also going to have it like rotate once. Not too much, just like one revolution. So remember that rotation is a story told in revolutions and degrees. So rotation I've set to 1 and 0. And so that means that it's going to spin once as it comes into place. Right now it's just spinning in place. And I'm going to move it to the right, holding shift, and that's going to snap it. So there we go. That looks pretty good. Let's do the letter F next. Letter F, I'm just going to use that angle that it's got. Zooming out, moving that. Okay, hitting letter U to see those keyframes again if I miss them. And then this side stem, I can just use my shift and arrow keys to move that out the way. Okay, that's out. Then my I stick, I can use my shift and arrow keys to move that out the way. Or I can use my mouse and just drag it. Okay, and moving that and going. So there, that's moving into place nicely. And remember, we are moving everything together, and then we're going to offset it after. So here's the top of my letter Z. Drag to the right, holding shift. Fabulous. Then I'm going to take the slash, drag that up, trying to keep that same angle. We can kind of treat this as like the bone in the middle of that diagonal. That's pretty good. Then here's the low Z. And drag that to the right, holding shift. That worked. And then we've got the R stick. Oh, R stick and R top should go after the E's. So I'm just going to change their layer order a little bit. Okay, here's my E stick. Oh, the anchor point's in some goofy location, I fear. Let's take a look by zooming in. Yeah, that's like in a weird spot. So if that happens to you and you can't find your anchor point, here's like a fun little trick you can do. Just go to the layer menu, go to transform, and choose center anchor point and layer content. And it'll pop it right into the middle. And again, I did that with my playhead on top of my final resting place, and therefore didn't make any sort of mistake. Didn't like shift my layer whatsoever. Dragging that out to the right, holding shift once more. Letter E's like round shape, I'm going to also rotate one revolution, and I'm going to move that off to the right. Okay, and then we have the R stick, and let me just move down like so. There we go. And then we have the R top, and the R top, I'm going to move that out to the right, and I'm going to give that also a 1 revolution. Okay, so let's play that back. It's going to look terrible because it's not done yet, so just hang in there. All right, so let's play that back. All right, so we're not done yet. Calm down. I know you're like, that looks terrible, Kalika. It's not done. Relax. It will look good. So next I'm going to offset my keyframes. So I'm going to take all these guys and I'm going to offset them by a couple of frames each. Okay. And I'm going to do this with the help of the in column. The in column is really helpful for this. There are other ways of offsetting keyframes, but this is a way that works really well and it's pretty simple. Okay. So we started at frame 29. And I'm just going to advance 2 frames for each one of these guys. 2 frames? 3 frames, sorry. I made a note to myself. And 3. And command click to deselect. On a PC, that's control click. And this takes a little time. I do have some little tricks that I use to offset keyframes. I'll get to those in a later lesson. One of my favorites is to use scripts for that. Scripts are basically these time-saving widgets for After Effects that make After Effects run faster, better, stronger, and they automate certain tasks. Okay, so all right, this was 56 for the previous one. This one I'm going to delay by 4 frames, and the final one I'm going to delay by 6 frames. There we go. And this is going to look pretty dope, friends. It's going to look awesome. Let me rewind and let's play it back. Not bad. All right, so we can set the end of our animation here. N for end. N on the keyboard will shorten that work area right up. And then I can do a little bit of finessing. So if I select all of my layers and I hit the letter U on my keyboard, I can see all my keyframes. And then if I hover my mouse in here and I hit the tilde or squiggle key, it's going to expand my timeline to fill my entire interface frame. Okay, and then I can go in here and I can make some adjustments. So I could add an ease on the second keyframe. So I can right click, keyframe assist, easy ease. And if I want to select a bunch of keyframes, draw a little box, hold the shift key, draw some more little boxes. There we go. And set all those guys to ease once you have all of them selected, holding shift to get them all, and then right click, keyframe assist, easy ease. Now if you're finding that you're doing a lot of easy ease, oh rats, it like deselected all of mine. If you find that you're doing a lot of easy ease, you might want to set up F9 to be your easy ease key. And you'll have to set that up in your preferences, which on a PC are in the edit menu, on a Mac are in the After Effects menu. And when you set up your keys, it's in the general section, and you will find there's on a Mac, there's this little section that says use system shortcut keys, and you want to turn that off. And then in your system preferences for a Mac, you also want to go in and change your keyboard settings so that your F keys are all used as standard function keys. This is really important. On a Mac, you have to set all that stuff up. On a PC, not so much. So here, I'm just going to select all these guys. Now I'm drawing boxes, holding shift, naming names, taking numbers, making sure all the last guys are selected. Okay? And then I just hit F9. Okay, great. Now, whenever I see a stray keyframe like this where it doesn't have a pair, I try to clean that up. So I don't need that guy. Click and delete, click and delete. So anytime there is a keyframe without a sibling, I just click it and hit delete. Click and delete. Awesome. So this is now ready to animate. Well, ready to export. It's animated. It's ready to export. So to export, fairly simple. first save your project. Ooh, we should have done that first. Okay. And then you're going to go to composition menu, add to render queue. Okay. Now, fun fact about After Effects. Okay, not that fun, but terrible. It can't natively export MP4s. I know, that's so incredibly sad to me too. And your default is probably set to lossless, which is a format that went out of style in like the 90s. So you want to set this to whatever the default best settings in lossless are. And then you want to come over here to where it says Q and ANE and click that. And fine, I'm getting some kind of error, whatever. Come on, man. Yeah, so my media encoder has decided to go on strike. Let's try media encoder. I'm just going to open it first. Sometimes if you get an error from After Effects, you'll do better to open up media encoder first and then send stuff over there, because there might be something within the media encoder that you need to fix up or delete or reset or whatever. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm looking at this. I'm clicking on the little button right here. I'm selecting all these guys and I'm hitting the delete key. Bye-bye. All right, so there's nothing in there. There should be no issue. I'm going to move that to my other monitor, and I'm going to click Q and AM. Oh, I got it. Oh, that's what it is. Ta-ta. I have to click right here on Output 2. 9 times out of 10, friends, it's our own fault. It has nothing to do with the software. Click on Output 2. Tell it where you want it to save. Yeah, that's super important. Go over to Logo Animation. Make an Exports folder. Double click that guy. And I'm double clicking and nothing's happening. Come on, man. Don't make a liar out of me. Check. Here it goes. Someday. Yeah. Is that so bored? Okay. Going back. Exports. Hitting save. And then Q and AME. And here is my media encoder. Double click to open that up. Oh, look at that. This is ready. This is ready. It's going to be so good. You guys ready? To export, and swivel this guy open. I want it to be exported using YouTube 1080p Full HD settings. So I'm just going to go into, like, if it doesn't say that, like usually if you've never used this before, it says match source high bitrate. So you're going to go over here to the little preset browser section and you're going to type in YouTube. And then if you scroll down, you'll see YouTube 1080p Full HD. Just drag and drop that like right on top. And it replaces that whole thing. And then once it replaces, it's going to still export to the same spot. But you have a moment where you can choose not to. You can just click on that output file path, take it over to your exports, and then click this little play button, and it's going to export. And you're done. It's amazing. Okay, so that wraps it up for logo animation 2 ways. If you have questions, drop them in the comments. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love it if you consider subscribing. And I hope to see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Okay? All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.